Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I am Everardo Resendiz, known around here as Coach Ever. I am a certified executive and business coach in Action Coach in Northwest Louisiana. Today, I have TJ Pitre, the owner of South Left, as my guest. We're going to be talking about his business, the journey to business ownership, challenges, best practices, and share a peek into what it really is like to build and operate a business. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications when we drop conversations just like this one. And so, TJ, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Will you share a brief overview of your background and a little bit about South Left?
Yeah, sure. I'll try not to take up too much time here. So my name's TJ Pitre. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. It's currently where I'm living right now. I run a primarily front-end design and development agency called South Left. We specialize in design systems or product accelerators, depending on where you're coming from, and either one of those terms will make more sense. Uh, the type of work that we do is we couple with digital teams to help them accelerate their product development. So whether it's software or any sort of web-based technology, we embed ourselves in those teams and then help them move their product development lifecycle forward with more efficiency. But I can dive into a little bit more detail about that later on.
Well, we're gonna have to inquire here a little bit on what got you into that. I
Sure.
mean, it's software development at some point, and then you move into this niche.
Yeah.
That's an interesting turn.
It is. So it started where, so before, so I went to Tulane, graduated with a degree in multimedia design. Before that, I was into graphic design, illustration. I thought I was going to be a comic book artist for the longest time. Realized the hard truth that comic book illustration is a cutthroat industry. It's very competitive. I submitted portfolios, got rejected. So quickly realized that that wasn't going to be my profession going forward. Kind of move that illustration artistic background into graphic design. And then so I started to do a lot of like logo packages and stationery and letterhead and things like that. And that was great. And that worked out pretty well for a while. And I really enjoyed doing graphic design because it allowed me to tap into my creative side. And it was for a while I was going to college, it served as a really good moonlighting. Made a couple of dollars in it, got some
Right.
experience, met a lot of people, did a lot of networking. It wasn't until there was one particular person that I was working with here in New Orleans, and she owns a tile company on Magazine Street, and she asked me if I can make her a website. I had already done her logo and her stationery package and all of that stuff, and I already had the tools to be able to make a website. I just didn't know how. But I remember that moment when she asked me, and my knee-jerk reaction was, "Yeah, absolutely," when I really had no idea how to make a
Right.
website. But I had back then it was the Macromedia suite. I'm dating myself now, but eventually Adobe bought Micromedia and I had Fireworks and Dreamweaver. And so I just fired those applications up and kind of taught myself how to use them. And then within a couple of weeks, I had a website for them. And one of the pieces of what I had used to build that website was technology that doesn't really exist anymore because of the iPhone, but it was Flash. I don't know if anybody remembers
Yes, I remember Flash. Oh,
yeah.
that
So
kind of dates us a little bit, doesn't it?
it does, yeah, certainly. But as we all know, iPhone kind of killed Flash. But Flash was great because it was like the perfect combination of like left side and right side of the brain because it was like I could create shapes and images and all of these different items, and then I could tween them with code. So I was writing action script in the action script panel, but I was actually creating all these shapes and stuff. So that was the catalyst for me to move into the coding side of the web development because at that point I had created this website. I understood the fundamentals of front end and web development, which is like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then now I'm like into like this animation and motion piece, which is fulfilling that creative side of what I wanted to do. So that went for a while. I did a lot of Flash development, a lot of Flash design. Eventually, I ended up getting hired at a local agency that doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was called Chop Shop Media on Chapatula Street, and had a wonderful boss there. Learned so much in that experience, and then that was when I was like, all right, now I am a web designer. I'm a web developer. From there, this is kind of the juicier part. Ended up getting a job right after Katrina with Emeril Lagasse, the local celebrity chef here, and they needed help because they were short-staffed on their web development side because they had some people who had to flee from obviously from
Right.
Katrina, and they needed help getting into some of the web pieces. At that point, I had already had 2 or 3 years of experience working with websites. So I kind of freelanced and consulted with them for a little bit, and I got their website back to maintain like running order, and then they offered me a job. So I ended up working at Emeralds as their webmaster, which is a title that you don't really hear anymore. And a couple of years into that job, Martha Stewart entered the picture, and she actually purchased like the entertainment and marketing and e-commerce portion of Emerald's empire. So the business kind of split to the restaurant side. There was Emerald still owned all the restaurant parts, and then there was the entertainment side, which was all now owned by Martha, which is part of my division. So I was in that department. And then I had the difficult decision of whether or not I wanted to move and go work at Martha Stewart's headquarters in New York or stay in New Orleans and then find another job maybe. But I had just recently been married, no kids. I just had two cats. And we said, yeah, let's do it. So this was like 2008 or so. Moved to New
Wow.
York, ended up starting working for Martha Stewart. I specifically focused in while I was there on front end design and development, which is what we do today. So that's kind of the transition. That's the foreshadowing into how I got to where we are now. Ended up working my way at Martha Stewart within 6 years from just a standard front end entry level front end developer to the director of web development or director of front end web development for Martha Stewart's digital properties, all of the digital properties that she had. I was able to run a team that maintained and progressed all of those different sites, which is an amazing job. And then at some point, I was like, I'm done with New York. I got to leave here. I want to go back home. I love New York, and I love all the connections and all the networks and all the beautiful friends that I made there. I still talk to most of them. We do a lot of work with most of them still. And then said, I'm going back home. So moved back to New Orleans. When I gave my leave, they said, I gave a 6 month leave. I said, because I needed to give them enough runway to say, hey, I'm going to move back home and to find a replacement. So I'm going to condense this part. My manager said, "I'd love for you to just stay working with us remotely." And he said, let me go check with Martha to see if everything's cool with that process. He said, just give me a letterhead and a business card and like file for your LLC, just so that way we could show that you're legit. So I don't know if this is, I suppose this is legal, but Martha approved it. And then for a year and a half after I had moved back home, Martha was my client, my first biggest client. So it was great to
Okay.
have the recognition and approval of my business, South Left. At that time, it was just me, independent contractor under an LLC,
So when was
living in New
this?
Orleans. This was 2013. So
Okay. All
yeah,
right. So
so moved back home.
that's the birth of South Left.
That's the birth, yeah. So the I still say to this day, whenever I do any of these interviews, Martha's the reason for the success. It was the combination of Emerald taking the chance on me, and then me making the decision to move to New York to go and like see through that whole the move, the climb, the networking, and just because it's not all you know. It's not all easy, I would say. It's like transitioning from New Orleans, which is the big easy, and a lot slower pace of a lifestyle to New York was a difficult transition, but it was exciting. It was a really cool experience, and there was definitely a honeymoon period where everything felt like going out every night, having fun in New York, living that New York lifestyle. To like, all right, so this is reality. No, it's equivalent to like living on the interstate, and like every time that you go to you're going to your subway, you're like moving into you're getting on the on ramp, and then you're merging into to rush hour traffic. But it was a great experience, and I couldn't have thought of a better time to do it for what my age was, because I was in like my mid 20s,
Right.
and then when I left there, I was in my very early 30s, and it felt like I had done the job. I felt like I put down the down payment for this part of my life, like the part of my life now that feels like I'm reaping the rewards and all the benefits from the hard work that I put in the my earlier years. And
Okay.
not to mention the experience that I've gained. 'Cause I talk about the networking a lot and the people that I've met, but there's just a lot of like soft skills and just learning things the hard way between human interaction. And because if you stay in New Orleans too long, you kind of get a little bit of a softer side. It's like, and you get a little maybe I don't want to say lazy, but New York definitely injected me with a little bit of get up and go
Gotcha.
mentality.
All right. So that's a birth of South Left. Um, in reality, it starts as a response to a, let's call it, challenge or an opportunity at the time. You needed to structure the way that you were going to be working with this particular client. And it then becomes yours. And so we'll go back to this part, but set the stage for the people who are viewing and listening right now. What's a role that you have in this business? Um, what's the structure of the business like?
Yeah.
Is it only you still, or are there other partners, things like that?
No, it's not just me. So I guess we just made 13 in April. For about the first 2 years, it was just me, and uh, and that's the way I thought it was going to be for the longest time. I thought it was just going to be me doing like this lifestyle business where I would. It was me and my wife actually, because my wife has a background in accounting and bookkeeping, which I don't. Which if there's one thing I'm admittedly really bad at, it's like keeping finances and keeping up on invoicing, which is like the part that I hated about doing it in freelance when I was moonlighting. But luckily, she was like, "All right, I'm going to help you with this. If we want to see this through, we're going to make this our livelihood. I'm going to jump in." We weren't necessarily business partners, but she was actually a school teacher at the time, and she was also helping with this. And then at some point, she actually quit her job as a school teacher to help me full time with this business.
Gotcha.
So I suppose at that point we were pretty much 50-50. Like I was handling all the client relations and all the actual development and design work. And she was doing all of the kind of the CFO. She was doing all of the financial strategy, building the invoices and operations for the business. But I wouldn't count her as like my first employee because it seemed like I was mostly the frontward facing person who was doing most of the business development and networking piece. But she was behind the scenes making sure that paychecks were coming in, invoices were
Right,
getting
right.
sent out, and we were getting paid. Um, there was one moment when I met with this local consultant, and we thought we were approaching this guy, and we were like, "All right, I don't know if we can afford his consulting fees, but I have some like really important questions I want to ask him about, how do we get to the next level of business development?" And so we went and met him. He had an office on Poydras Street, downtown, and so we approach and we have all of our paperwork together because I'm expecting to go into this conversation like to really talk about the details of developing a business for like the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan. And then the way he was able to like grasp what I was trying to say and distill it down into this one little thing, it was almost like it's like there's a lot of motivational quotes out there, but it was just like, look, you got to do the hard thing. And at that time, the hard thing that I was just being around the bush about was hiring the first person
Right.
because I was so used to making this certain amount of money where I just couldn't fathom what might be like to where if I'm making the six-figure salary and it's like me and my wife and we're just like, going out every night and living this lifestyle, we're thinking like this is just going to be it for the rest of our lives. But the way he had reframed it for me, he was like, you kind
Okay. And so I'm sorry. Yeah, we're gonna whenever the team edits this, they're gonna remove this part. But you were talking about,
yeah, I think I was talking about it was the when we went and saw the business
yes,
development consultant.
consultant.
So he had boiled it down to like basically saying, uh, you got to do the hard thing. And the hard thing that was the part that we're just being very hesitant about was letting go of it felt like we were making such strides. And back then, like the measure of success was money. We're like
Yes.
we're doing like we're just watching our bank accounts get fat and it's just me and my wife and the inquiries are rolling in because we had gotten a really good name because of the Martha Stewart connection. We were working with all these digital publications. So we ended up working with like Condé Nast and Time Inc. and Meredith and all these wonderful organizations whom I've met, so many amazing people, and a lot of those people that I still work with today. I wasn't ready to take a hit. And I knew that hiring somebody meant benefits, it meant salary, it meant like people managing and
Right.
everything that comes along with that. But it was one of those slow down to start up kind of situations where I he basically said, like, if you want to turn this from a lifestyle business into something more equitable, something that you can actually rely on and grow and scale, and then perhaps get acquired or leave it to somebody else to inherit, then you've got to take that leap. And then you've got to stop thinking about like your personal finances in make a strategic, a risky, but a risky strategic decision. Don't just jump on something, pay somebody 150K out of the gate, and then you take the hit for it. Like, look around, make sure that you've got a nest egg, make sure that you've got your own payroll set up for 3, 6 months, however much you need put away, and take a chance on somebody. So we ended up interviewing some people, found about 3 candidates, flew one down to New Orleans. She's from Beach Lake, Pennsylvania. Hired her during that she was here for about 3 days. We took her out to dinner. We took her to breakfast the next morning, and then we gave her the announcement. We gave her the offer letter at breakfast, and then she's like, "Can I think about it?" And then about maybe 2 or 3 days later, she was like, "I'm going to take it," and she's still here to this day. So our first
Awesome.
hire. So like yeah, like almost 10 years later, she's still here. She runs our front end development team. She's a front end team lead, and she's amazing. She's the one that people ask for by name whenever we engage in projects, and she's part of the reason why we get a lot of recurring
Now
business.
she
So
moved to New Orleans. She relocated.
no, no. So that's what I had mentioned that at the beginning of the call. We're 100% remote, and we always
Yeah.
have been since
Okay.
day one. We're not like COVID remote. We're way remote, way before way before any kind of COVID things.
So
But
how many people in your team right now, TJ?
so these days we're about 12 with about, I don't know, it ebbs and flows between 4 and 6 subcontractors. Got about two full-time, or three full-time, and then 2 or 3 that are part-time. But I feel like that's the model that we're going in. The biggest we've ever been, we're about 26 in-house. And then we started to kind of, the more we leveraged a lot of AI, the more we saw ways that we can increase efficiencies and then right size the team. And then around 2023, when a lot of the like layoffs were happening in the larger technical areas, like a lot of the
Yeah.
Metas and Googles and Microsofts and Shopify and like all these different larger technical organizations, and Twitter and all that was happening at the time, the acquisition there. A lot of that ended up trickling down to us. And then we ended up having our first round of layoffs in 2023. So we went like a nice 10 years without ever laying anybody off. And then around that time, we started to think about like what are superfluous positions that are here? Like what do we do? Because we were riding high for a while. We got the PPE money, like from we got a decent
Right.
little
Good.
injection from the COVID stuff, and that was great. And business is still booming. COVID actually helped us because there was a lot of brick and mortar shops that needed e-commerce experiences because there was no way for them to sell their products, so we are getting that
Right.
kind of business coming in. There were like new initiatives that needed to happen for foundations and government grant organizations for nonprofits that needed to spin up these sites for COVID related information to put out there. So we were building websites a lot at that time. And after that kind of dried up, in all these layoffs started happening, and I think other organizations were also right-sizing their organizations. That made its way down to us, and we started. So there were a lot of budget-conscious projects, but a lot of projects just kind of got shelved for a little bit, paused indefinitely. So then that forced me to really take a step back. And at that time, I was doing a lot of work on projects. I had to take a step back and say, all right, I'm not involving myself in projects anymore. I need to be like the CEO. Back then, I called myself the director of technology. I was founder and director of technology. So I was like inserting myself in projects and actually doing a lot of work and being hands-on in the development process. But at some point, I figured I need to step back and see things from a much more macro level and do a lot of the CEO job. So I changed my title to CEO, and I appointed another director of technology to take the spot that I was in before. And then now
Hold
that's where
on.
I'm at.
Stop there for a second. Stop there
Yep.
for a second. This is very interesting. So there was a hang up there. I mean, you have been CEO from the get, right? You have been
Technically, I never called myself that though. I was always founder and I ran the business, but I didn't operate like a CEO. That was
Okay.
I was mostly operating like a BDR. Like I was mostly doing business development and networking. Like CEOs do that, but I was for any business development related macro tasks, like big overhead, like how do I see myself with the big, hairy, audacious goals? And we would hire consultants. So we would get consultants that would come in periodically to kind of like measure and audit where the business is, and then give us recommendations on what are next steps. And then we check back in to see if everything was aligned. But basically, they were like fractional CEOs for us because where my comfort zone was flow state in the projects, doing design work, doing design engineering, doing front end development, coming up with system architectures, and that's where. But that was selfish. Like in hindsight, it just felt like that's not where I belonged. And it was probably part of the reason. It is part of the
This is
reason
very
why.
important, TJ, because a lot of people in business have these, let's call it challenge, okay, of really shifting. They're good at something and they almost, want to keep their hands in it. When in reality, they're doing a disservice not only to themselves, but everybody that is working with them, because there's
Absolutely.
so much of you, right? And so your business is only going to grow to the extent that you allow it to grow.
Yep.
So this is critical. Thank you for bringing that up. It's one of those things that we look for in doing these interviews.
Yeah.
Like these are the real nuggets, the things that will make a difference for people to know. What I want to know right now is what led you to make that connection where you figured, okay, yes, I am not operating as a CEO, right? And I need to. What was the need?
It was when we started to see the writing on the wall, when inquiries were drying up, and a lot of the conversations that we're having about projects were we were starting to shift our focus of services to focusing on services that are a little bit on the fringe of what we offer, just so that way we can cater to a wider audience to get projects in that aren't necessarily within our wheelhouse. And then just fundamentally, it didn't align with our vision. It didn't align with our core
Right.
values. And that's when it felt like, well, who's responsible for this? And then I can only point the finger at me. And that was my awakening. That was me saying, this is my responsibility. And I've been so consumed in wanting to be a part. In retrospect, I feel like it was micromanaging because I just wanted to make sure that we did this, everything within projects were done like the South left way. And so we always had coding standards and then all these different workflows that I had created that I wanted to ensure that the team was abiding by. And so the only way I could do that was if I was embedded in those projects. So I can actually see the way that they're being ran. I didn't give them enough autonomy to be able to delegate that to them and then understand that I hired these people. They went through a pretty rigorous onboarding process. I have to be able to trust them with this. Not only with the code base and the quality of the code and the quality of designs that we're shipping, but also client communications. I hire them not only for their hard skills, but their soft skills. Like they need to go out there and be able to talk about the code they're doing, provide really well articulated demos, and then show them the code to the people that we're working with. Because a lot of times we're doing team augmentation where we're working with other digital teams, and show them the code that we're creating, and then have them approve it, and then take a step back and then let them do it. So that was around the time when
Hold
it
on.
was a slow
Did I
burn.
just hear that you designed your processes so that you were part of?
Yeah, well, I designed the processes which were for me, or because I
Okay.
would document and template the way I was doing things,
Right. Right.
knowing that
Right.
eventually, like if and when someone gets hired and I start creating teams, that the only way that I can ensure success were if they were doing it the way that I was doing it. And I'm still okay with that because we actually still do things in accordance with the way that I would prefer to see things. I come from a fundamentalist background when it comes to front end design and development. It's hard to understand if you aren't in the industry, but there's a moment when in front end design and development where things shifted to like being very reliant on frameworks and dependencies for. So instead of, and I remember when hiring people after my first hire, it was like I would go in these interviews and I would ask them how to do like basic fundamentals of front end development, and they would start throwing out all these frameworks at me, just like helper libraries and things. And it's like, no, 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 wait. Like you have to know how to do these things first before you can like graduate to that thing. Like that thing will only help you, but these things are what you need to rely on. I guess the equivalent would be like um
I'm thinking
uh,
an architect and actually knowing how to use AutoCAD before they use anything else.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It's like understanding how to use the AutoCAD software, but not understanding pipe fitting or understanding steel detailing or like what goes into it. So it's like there you need to understand the fundamentals of what it is that you're building in order to
Right.
understand. It's good that you understand the software, but you also have to understand the materials. So there's like a fundamental base knowledge that was missing because this is back when like there was like 6 month boot camp to learn React and you'll make six figures right out. And it's like that's a lot of false advertising because we would get the interviews and then we would put them through a test. It's a very basic fundamental front end test, and they'd all fail it. It was awful. So that take a
Right.
lot of weeding through that process to get to those types of people. So anyway, so I had created all these templates that were like the way that I would prefer things to do. So I ended up hiring a lot of like other versions of me, people who also share that same passion, which I still do to this day. Um, so 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 yes, in a way, I created these templates for me to be involved in these projects, only to ensure that these team members are following through the templates that
Right.
I had
You
created.
knew the way that it needed to be done. So
Exactly.
that's the only way that it's gonna get done.
And then just for better or for worse, I end up sticking around and then doing some of the work myself, which I know in hindsight is not good, but at least I had the realization I had to come to Jesus moment to say, okay, I got to get myself out of here because I have to
Right.
focus on the future. I have to focus on the well-being of the team, and I have to make sure that this team is fed. I got to like not like actual food, but like work. I need to make sure that we have 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year work slated out, and we have a waiting list to get in here. And so that's when I shifted my attention towards being a CEO and working on those aspects. And that's the position I've been in for the last 2 or 3 years now.
Wow. So when I'm trying to explain this to people, I tell them, there's a reason why generals are on the front line, right? And admirals, they have to have a bigger view, a different perspective, right? If you're there in the middle of it, right? Even if you're in one of those boats, it's you're not going to get the same perspective. And so that's the transition. That's the difficulty of it. Knowing that somewhere out there, somebody's loading up a gun, right? With the what you need to shoot with, but you don't know the details. You don't know who that person is, how well they're trained. You just know that when you call it, that better be going out somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a difficult transition. Now let me go back a little bit to your
Yep.
journey. Through the years of doing these, you've been at it for more than 10 years. There are memorable times when things really got iffy, right? We all go through these stages where we kind of question, are we doing the right things? You mentioned one of these being this transition. Um, what is the most memorable one aside from that you were like, this is not working at all?
Uh, uh, the the first time I had to lay off any member, so it was when the first layoff round was, I think it was 3 or 4 people. I think it was 3 people. And that was just a gut punch. And that I didn't know. I consulted with HR and I thought I was doing the right thing. And in retrospect, it just felt like I did it all wrong. And I lost sleep over that. I feel like the team, like just the morale was so low. And I feel like I lost a lot of respect for the team. I fumbled through that whole process. So it I don't know if I could have messed it up worse than I did when I went through that process. And I still think about it. I lose sleep over it because like in that process, I think I made enemies with the and luckily a lot of them have been patched up, but it took a lot of work. But I just botched that so bad. I think that I got it was my first time doing it, and I got terrible advice in the way it all went down. I regret all of it. We have had to had layoffs since then, but I've learned a lot from that mistake in prepared better for it. One of the biggest issues that I think in that first round of layoffs is that I was just so selfish. I was just so in denial that I could be failing because it's like we just went from being like amazing. Like, we had our record year and finances were good, projects were rolling in, but then we couldn't see 6 months down the line, like past 6 months. It was like things
Right.
looking are looking like they might dry up. And at that time, procurement was like I don't know, anywhere between 6 to 3 months, sometimes 7 months, it was long. But before then, we'd get an inquiry for our project and then we'd sign that project within 3 or 4 weeks and then we'd start, 2 weeks later. So things are taking a much longer time. So it was just a little bit of unsteadiness because things felt unstable, not only with the economy and the state of technology in general and digital services, but also with the potential clients that were in our pipeline. We used to be able to rely heavily on our gut percentage of whether or not this project was going to land and then put that in our forecasting. And then all of a sudden, we start getting really skeptical. Like what used to felt like 85% chance, yes, that we're going to get this, felt like, I don't know, man, this is more like a 50% chance. So we turned from being super optimistic to kind of pessimistic in a way.
Right.
Like, so everything was approached with a healthy dose of skepticism, which is kind of the way I approach things now. And it sounds like a doom and gloom kind of outlook, but I've always like expected for the worst but hope for the best kind of situation, and I feel like I'm never let down if I approach things that way. And but there are positive outcomes to that because I feel like if I have a feeling that's not gonna land. Mentally, I feel like I'll do everything I can to prepare it best for me to be able to land that, whatever it takes, phone calls, emails, aligning with people, physical appearances, whatever it takes. And if it doesn't, at least I could say I gave it my all. I tried. I tried as hard as I could, so I don't feel as let down but I was already prepared for it to not work out anyway. And then on to the next one. So I do keep a positive mentality when it's like there'll always be a next one, there'll always be a next one.
But the
Um,
difficulty that you described had to do really with the fact that you're dealing with people, right?
yeah.
Aside from all these contexts that you're elaborating on, the difficulty is you're dealing with people, and you mentioned you boss it. What do you do now to make sure that this doesn't become another burden?
Yeah.
What's the difference? What would you tell people that are in this situation? They're considering having to do layoffs.
So this is going to sound um, cold, but if you see the if you see if you because it's only you and your finance team or whoever's working with you who can like understand and forecast what's coming up next. There's the probability things and there's the reality things that are
Right.
happening. If you see in the reality whole side of things, the reality column, that things are going to be ending at a certain time, or there's trouble roads ahead, there's some storms are brewing that you have to get ready for. That's the moment when you have to start thinking about layoffs. There's the positive side where it's like, well, things might, if this hits, if this lands, if this check comes in, if I can get this invoice sent out, you're living in this iffy land. And the only person that you're going to be hurting is yourself and your team. Because what'll end up happening is that you'll milk your reserves if you have any, or you'll start depleting your equity lines or any other loans
Right.
or anything else that you're going to do. And what'll end up happening is that you will have to lay people off. And then in that moment of having to lay people off, you won't be able to afford any packages for them to be sent home with. You won't be able to afford to pay their insurance for another month or two because that's how long it's going to take for them to find another job. You are hurting just for the purposes of trying to keep things afloat within your business. You're actually hurting your team more than you're helping them. If you see reality coming and that there isn't anything in the pipeline past 3, 6 months or whatever, and you've got a decent team and you know your payroll is the majority of the money that goes out every month, that's the time to start thinking about layoffs. That's the time to start taking some of that padded income, whatever you have on the side, whatever reserves, and start thinking about giving them a healthy package and then sending them off that way. Pay for their insurance for a month or two, give them 2 or 3 payroll cycles to ensure that they're supported for their next job, the next job search. And that's the way, that's the best situation that you can have for serving the team that served you best if you have to let go of them. That's the hard reality that I learned. I was so full of myself thinking that there's no way this business is gonna dip. Like we're too good for this. But the sad reality is that business ebbs and flows, and you just have to get used to that. And cutting them loose sooner rather than later is better for them than it is
Right.
for them cutting loose later and not having anything to work from, not
It
having not
also
having
gives you the
any
ability
safety net.
to
You just,
it
you
gives you the
just
ability to communicate with them earlier in the process. Maybe even start hinting that there's issues you need to be
absolutely.
sorted. I mean, sure
Transparency the
thing.
whole way too. That's another piece. It's like don't hide it until the last moment. Be transparent about your finances up front. Say, hey, look, the Q1 and Q2 did not hit our marks. We did not hit like we got, within 22% of our goals, which means that there could be some things coming down the line. So either be prepared for us to reduce hours, therefore reducing salary, or we may have to make some cuts and do a little bit of a reorg. And just being open and honest with them, I feel like helps them respect you more about the stuff you're going through. It's
Right.
like you don't want your whole team thinking that the person who's owning and running the business is somewhere making like high six figures, taking tons of vacations and traveling the world on yachts. I'm in it too. When it comes to layoffs, I'm the first one to take a pay cut because I want to do that. It isn't something that I go tell you like I don't humble brag about it. Like, hey, I'm taking a pay cut. Y'all are good. Like I just when it gets announced, we say these are the things that are happening, and it's a bulleted presentation where it's like like we are going to be reducing hours by 10 hours per week, and we're going to be getting rid of this benefit. No more matching 401k. And then while things are low, it's fine. We had to do that earlier this year, and then things started ramping back up. And now all of a sudden, we're back at our pipeline's full. We're feeling good. The team's happy, and I think they appreciated just the transparency and the clarity on how things are going, like not just from project wise, but finances. It's important for them to understand where we're at with finances.
So the theme in the undercurrent here, what is being said ultimately is there has to be a lot of productivity. Everything that you have described to me from, the moment that you started in this business, going to a consultant, all of this has to do with you being able to look ahead. The fact that you had to transition to a CEO was because you needed to look ahead. So this sense of proactiveness comes into play into all these things. Thank you for sharing all that with us.
Yeah,
We have
absolutely.
certainly covered a lot of ground in this conversation today. And for those people who are watching, I highly encourage you to save these and come back a few times for an additional watch. There's a lot of great nuggets in here. And so as we begin to wrap up, TJ, I have a few rapid fire questions. Okay.
Fire away.
So quick top of head answers for each. Number one, what is the key to success for you?
Key to success is take risks. Take risks, not crazy risks. Don't just like jump into something and do it right away. Take a strategic risk. Don't be afraid to jump. Every line you draw will likely end up drawing another line after it. So just keep up progress. Start somewhere.
What is one piece of advice for other business owners?
One piece of advice for other business owners, don't be so consumed in yourself. Like you may be doing well alone. Don't be afraid to delegate and then gather some people around you
Yes.
because your support structure, because what is it? All tides rise ships. I forget what that saying is. You alone can travel fast, but you with the team will travel farther.
Well, that's awesome. That's a very good one. What is one book that you believe every business owner should have in hands so that it has made a difference for you?
Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, number one, and that's inside business, that's outside business. That just has to be just general conversational respect, how to elevate other people when you're around them. And a second book is Who Moved My Cheese? My old mentor and boss, Ira Tao, gave me this book. It's more of a pamphlet, but it just goes to tell you how, if for entrepreneurs, it really gives you like a Aesop's fable version of how to adapt to change and how to adapt quickly and
Right.
strategically.
And actually, I have it as a rule to read it at least once a year.
Got to. You got to
You
remind
you
yourself.
you something else strikes every time that you go through it.
Yeah, we're going through it now with this AI phase, and you have to adapt and change. Don't be hem and haw and sit around and wait for things to go away. It's not going away. It's here to stay. Just adapt.
That's right. Okay, so if you had to choose only one area of your business you could immediately improve tomorrow, what will that be?
Sales. Sales is something that I'm terrible at because I just feel like being on the receiving end of people who are trying to sell me, I see through it a lot. And it just feels like there needs to be a more creative way of getting through to people to generate quality leads. I am not the person to send you a templated AI-driven email with the hopes that I'll get one lead out of every 100,000 emails or newsletters that I sent out. If I don't know the secret sauce to sales, and I wish I did, but that's a whole nother conversation, and I'm actually working on it, so I'm actively trying to get better at that.
Love it, love it. And it's a process at the end of the day. You're right. It isn't just the one thing. Most people think that it's just enough to go and find the people. It isn't, because you
It's
want it to be
rough.
systematic,
And you
right?
want it to be authentic.
That's right. That's right. And so, before we get into the final question of the day, how can other people learn more about you and your company?
Yeah, sure. I'm really active on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle is T Pitre, T first initial Pitre, Pitre. You can find us at southleft.com. That's southleft.com. The website's pretty comprehensive. It has all of our case studies, services, everything's covered there. You can contact us through it. You can contact me through DMs and LinkedIn. So feel free to follow me there. And yeah, I love talking to new people. So if anybody ever just wants to like meet up to talk shop about front end design systems, entrepreneurship, business development, whatever, I'm available.
Awesome. And so, last question, TJ, what do you find is most inspiring for you nowadays?
Oh man, I hope this doesn't sound cliche, but the it, it just technology. Like there was a lull for a little while when it felt like that the work that we were doing didn't provide as much value as it once did because the seas or there was a lot of fish in the pond that we were swimming in. So a lot of people were doing a lot of the similar work. But it wasn't until I I honed my inner scratch and sniff from Who Moved My Cheese and quickly adapted to AI and then got in the weeds in depth with AI. And now we're able to feel like we're 3 to 4 steps ahead of other organizations just because of the way that we're building AI-driven tools into organizations and improving larger enterprise level organizations by leveraging AI and showing them how they can connect departments and connect roles with little friction. And so it's just a lot of, it's kind of like that the feeling of uh mission accomplished for the work that we've been doing, and now we're just kind of managing and maintaining. Now it just feels like a whole new land has been opened up that we haven't even discovered yet. So we're just out here like Christopher Columbus, like sure, maybe not Christopher Columbus, but we're out here exploring new territories that have been uncharted before. So this to
Right,
me
right.
has been the most exciting
And it's
area to
ever
be in a
expanding, and
while.
it's ever renewing. So, it's
It's so
only
much
it's never ending.
opportunity. Every morning I'll wake up inspired to build a new thing, to talk about a new thing, to write a new article, to illustrate a new workflow that I've been just dreaming about. So I've never been this inspired since like iPhone apps came out. Like that was like a whole new
Yeah.
thing. Or responsive web design in my world was huge. But this is like another resurgence of just pure unbridled joy and excitement.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, TJ, and sharing all these with us. Thank you to the audience for watching and sharing. You never know who you can inspire by just having them listen to this interview. And so, without further ado, we're going to finish today, but thank you so much for being here today. Make it a great day. Until next
Appreciate
time.
it. All right. Talk to you later.